Is the reign of the US dollar in global trade under an existential threat? This may well be the case because a critical decades-long deal between Saudi Arabia and the US, known as the petrodollar deal, expired on June 8. The deal was originally signed on June 8, 1974. Through it, the US agreed to buy oil from Saudi Arabia in exchange for military aid and equipment, while the Saudis would invest their petrodollar revenue back into the US economy. In other words, petrodollars are US dollars in exchange for crude oil exports. The expiry of the deal now allows Saudi Arabia to sell its oil in multiple different currencies, such as the Chinese renminbi and yuan, the euro and the British pound, as well as cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. Vital to the US's global economic influence, the expiry or the collapse of the deal is expected to impact the US dollar value and its dominance in global trade, as experts now also predict that Saudi Arabia is intending to end its association with USD following its entry into BRICS, which seeks to prioritize trade in local currencies. With Russia and Saudi Arabia now vying to move away from trading in USD, will the global dominance of the dollar, which is still the most dominant currency in the world, be coming to an end?
Whew, I told you guys, I've been telling you guys this for a few years now, that the dominance of the US dollar was likely coming to an end. And I think that's a big part of the reason that the elites in our society are freaking out the way that they are freaking out, and essentially alienating the entire world at this point, which is the last thing you want to do. But here we are, the people that you all voted for, because, you know, I vote third party. I didn't vote for Joe Biden. Have definitely stepped in it now. So for some context, the petrodollar agreement that the United States and Saudi Arabia agreed to has expired. The Gulf nation has decided not to renew that deal that expired on June the 9th. This move is seen as a global finance paradigm shift. It is a game changer from the United States dollar as the world's reserve currency. The termination of this deal has global consequences for the United States of America and its citizens. Now, this deal was considered a major part of U.S. global dominance. You know, having the entire world having to trade in dollars was a huge boon to America and American citizens. Now, this 50-year agreement has had huge geopolitical and economic impacts around the world. It shaped the global energy market and influenced international relations between nations, because they all had to buy American dollars. They all had to buy American currency. They had to buy whatever they were going to buy, especially oil, in American currency, the US dollar. The petrodollar system was signed in 1974 as a result of a bilateral agreement between the United States and Saudi Arabia. Both nations decided to price and trade oil in the United States dollar. Now, with the oil being priced in dollars, every country that purchased oil from Saudi Arabia had to pay in dollars. Other oil producing countries also had to standardize their oil pricing in US dollars. This gave the petrodollar the power, the strength, basically to rule the world's economy. Now, what did Saudi Arabia get out of this? Saudi Arabia got military support from the United States and security guarantees from the United States. It ensured that the House of Saud, which is really the sort of family that we propped up, and us in Great Britain, and you know, one day I'm going to have to do a segment on the history of that. we essentially propped up Saudi Arabia to keep the Arab world from uniting. I hope you guys know that, right? The entirety of sort of Western imperialist global foreign policy has been about stopping Arabs from uniting, stopping Africans from uniting, stopping Latin Americans from uniting, and stopping Asians from uniting. And stopping Eastern Europeans from uniting. You know, that's why they hate Russia. That's why they hate Vladimir Putin, because Vladimir Putin wants to unite Eastern Europe. They don't want that. They don't want the Asians united. They don't want Africans united. They don't want Latin Americans united. They don't want Arabs united. And Saudi Arabia was a big part of that because the Wahhabist form of Islam that is, you know, practiced by the House of Saud, that is, should I say, disseminated and sort of perpetuated by the House of Saud, is the extreme form of Islam that we have used to destabilize the entirety of the Middle East. And so the Saudis have had a big role in our consistent plans to destabilize the entirety of the Middle East and make sure that there cannot be uniting of the Arab states. Israel's a part of that too. So that's why you look at our friends in there. It's Israel, it's Saudi Arabia. Both are strategically placed where they are placed for a reason: to stop the Arab world from uniting. So we gave the Saudis protection. They gave us cheap oil and allowed us to essentially control the world's economy with the dollar. Now, also, the Saudis agreed to invest their oil money in treasury secretaries, which helped finance the deficit and stabilize the United States dollar even more. This 6-page agreement was signed at the Blair House across the street from the White House by Henry Kissinger. Remember him? We just talked about him a few months ago when he died, and the world instantly became a better place because of it. Yes, so Henry Kissinger signed this agreement, and Prince Fahd ibn Abdel Aziz, who later became the king of Saudi Arabia. Now, Kissinger said at the time that we consider this a milestone in our relations with Saudi Arabia and Arab countries in general. Basically saying this helps us keep a foot in the Middle Eastern Arab countries and be able to, like I said, make sure that there is no pan-Arabic unity in that region of the world. Now, the crucial decision to not renew this contract means that Saudi Arabia can sell their oil and other goods in whatever currency they want, including the Chinese renminbi, the yen, euros, the yuan, or even Bitcoin. Now, it is possible that this means that the United States dollar will soon no longer be the reserve currency of the entire world, and this can spark a Great Depression inside the United States that we won't be able to just print money and get out of. The reason we're able to print money and fix a lot of our problems and have endless wars and, you know, allow the rich to get richer, you know, by providing subsidies and all these other things to the richest people in the country is because we are the reserve currency of the world. With the petrodollar no longer being the world reserve currency, with the dollar no longer being the dominant currency in the world, that could be at an end. You could see a Great Depression that makes the 1929 Great Depression look like, you know, child's play, and the 2008 recession look like a skip in the park. Now, there are other people, to give the other side, there are other people who think that the U.S. dollar will continue to be the world's reserve currency as long as the U.S. economy is the world's most open and robust which, yeah, good luck with that. And that a lot of people think that it would take something like World War III to change that. Well, guess who's sleepwalking us into World War III? Joe Biden. Guess who just gave Ukraine the okay to strike inside Russia, the country with more nuclear weapons than any country on earth, including the United States? Sleepy Joe, Genocide Joe, Jim Crow Joe, take your pick. You know, I prefer Jim Crow Joe because I don't like the fact that black people seem to have no problem voting for a guy who helped mass incarcerate our entire community and was a segregationist and was friends with segregationists like Strom Thurmond, who he eulogized at his funeral and made him out to be the greatest guy in the world. So I go with Jim Crow Joe, but others go with Genocide Joe. That's adequate. If you look at what he's enabling in Israel and the Gaza Strip right now. But the crazy thing is that the media has barely covered this from what I've seen. I've seen very little coverage of this. And this might be the single most important event of the last few years, because again, the reason that America is able to do a lot of things that it does because the US dollar is the world's reserve currency. And the US dollar was the world's reserve currency because of the petrodollar agreement that we agreed to with Saudi Arabia. I can't reiterate enough how alienating the last 2 or 3 years of the Biden administration has been to the rest of the world. I know a lot of you get your news from MSNBC and CNN and NBC and ABC and CBS. They are not telling you this. But we just saw Thailand. Thailand is joining BRICS. We've seen Saudi Arabia, who are our friends, joining the BRICS. We see all these countries that for many years either lived and feared with us or at least cooperated with us, joining the BRICS alliance. They are teaming up against us, especially African countries, Asian countries, Latin American countries, Middle Eastern countries. These countries have decided that they are sick and tired of being bullied by the United States, and they are coming together to create their own currency. Now, this might take a decade or so for them to fully have a BRICS currency, but if that day, if and when that day happens, you better believe it would be catastrophic for us as American citizens. Be prepared to pay gas prices like they pay in Europe, which is why everybody in Europe has such little cars. If you think you have trouble finding real estate now, and hopefully next week, I wanted to get to it this week, but stuff happened. Next week, hopefully I'll be able to get to Gary's housing market, which is on fire for the first time in many years. But if you think it's hard to find a house now, oh boy. You know, so much of everything we do is affected by global oil prices. The food we eat, because so much of it comes on trucks and boats, planes, all that. Oil prices affect that. That's why we've seen such high inflation since the war in Ukraine started. I'll tell the story. I used to pay $7.99 for some hamburger patties at the Miller Key Market for 20 patties. This was just in 2021, I'm sorry. In 2021, 2022, I was paying $7.29. Now they're $14. Same thing I used to buy for $7.99. Now it's $13, $14. That is because the price of oil, because Russia was providing much of Europe with oil and was keeping oil prices stabilized, and the United States decided that they were going to cut Russia off, which backfired spectacularly because all Russia did was then sell all their oil to India and to China who, guess what, are the two most populous countries on the planet. And then the Indians started selling repackaged Russian oil to European countries that were banned from getting Russian oil. But now the price has gone up because the Indians stepped on it. This is the people we have running this country. And then people ask me why I don't vote for Jim Crow Joe. That's why I don't vote for Jim Crow Joe. I'm not voting for Trump either. He's a clown as well. But I'm not supporting what Joe Biden is doing. I've given him credit for the one thing he did. Putting Lena Khan as the head of the FTC. Best move of a president I've seen in my lifetime. But in virtually every other way, he has been a complete disaster. And all this is happening while they are inviting millions of people. Biden has flown thousands, tens of thousands of people into the country. I guess because they are not making up this sort of military, the military roles that they wanted to. I played the clip of Dick Durbin from Illinois saying exactly that like the military's not meeting their enlistment desires, and so let's bring some all these military age men in the country to make up the difference. Here we go. Here we go. They're pushing us towards World War III. They're antagonizing Russia and China and Iran. They are alienating the world, the entire world, with what's going on in Israel and our continued support for that genocide. Everything they've said that Donald Trump would do. Everything they said Donald Trump would do, from putting his competitors in prison to alienating the rest of the world to starting World War III, Joe Biden is in the process of doing. And that's why I don't believe there is a the two-party system. The two parties that we have, not these people are not the answer. That's why I think you're gonna have to have some alternative political movements in order for us to get out of this mess. The people who got us in it are not gonna get us out of it. I just don't see it, folks. As for what we can do, if I would say, hold on to your properties. You know, if you own your home, do your best to hold on to it. Look into things like gold and silver. You know, look at some stable coins. Look at Bitcoin. You know, because ultimately being completely exposed to US dollar does not seem to be a winning proposition for anybody at this point. And the people who run this country, I don't think they're dumb. They're just insane. These are warmongers who are corrupt and completely owned by Wall Street and the military-industrial complex. They have no regard for what they are sleepwalking all of us to. All right, folks. I know that should make you feel good, but we've got another case coming up, a very serious case about a young man who was falsely accused of rape and had his name slandered all over town, who has now been completely exonerated. We are going to talk about Mr. Terrence Shannon Jr. and the downside, the dark side of Me Too and Believe All Women, especially if you're black. We'll be right back after these. Stay with us.